Well, I got a couple projects going on. This is the main one here. I've got the stuff that I think I need to add a fuse block. There's the factory fuse box there for the razor. And I think I'm going to mount this upside down. But I wanted to mount another fuse block next to it. And it's got 6 slots in it, 6 bladed fuses. So I need to bring power into here. And then that runs down the bus of the middle here. So all you gotta do is plug a fuse in, and then you'll have power on each of the screws. So you can use your screw terminals to tie items in. So it's kind of a prelude to adding a light onto the top of the razor. But I think I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the wiring that I did for the winch, the control for the winch, and go ahead and tie that into the fuse blocks also. I didn't pull much. I can probably get away with a 1 or 2 amp fuse. I want to tie that into the fuse block also, and leaves room for future growth. I want it to shut off when I take the key out. So where the winch is tied in now is an accessory wire. And what I did was I bought a GM wire harness. So I'm going to mount this in there, and then I ordered a relay for it. So this I'm going to power from that accessories. So all it needs is a ground on this wire, and then the accessories in on this wire, and that will energize the relay. Then I'm going to use this to run from my contactor. All right, because I've already got power coming into my contactor from the battery. They're in yellow is negative, blue is positive. So where the blue and yellow wires tie into the contactor there, I was going to tie in there with the relay to borrow power off there. I don't plan on really ever using the winch while I got everything else turned on. So if I ever need to use the winch, all I can do is turn everything else off, and then I won't be using power through the wires there. And sometime down the road, I may change those 2 wires out and put bigger gauge wires in there. I found out that Warren uses bigger gauge wires than the Viper winch does, and that kind of bothers me. And so I might go ahead and change them out anyway. But that's the plan. So this wire harness, which also has its own relay in it, and I won't need the fuse. It's got a fuse in it. I won't need the fuse because I'm tying into the fuse block. But this will come out of the fuse block and go up to the top to actually power a light bar that'll come in Tuesday. So this to power the fuse box, and this to power my light bar. So, and I didn't want to use the real basic switch that came with this wire harness. It's right here. It's a push on, push off. So I ordered kind of interesting one here. Found this for $15 on Amazon. So I'm going to use it, and it's a LED lit red switch, so the backlighting of it will match the backlighting of the instruments that are already in here. So that's the plan. I'll video as I go along, as I do different steps of it, and show you what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Thanks. Oh, almost forgot. While I'm in here, while I got it all tore apart, a while back I had hit something in the trail, no idea what it was. It was dark, we were coming out from hog hunting. It actually punched a hole in my battery box. So it's actually pretty cheap. I think it was only, gosh, I want to say $20-something. I don't know if that's right or not. But the battery box is actually part of a bigger assembly, so I wanted to change out all that if I have time while I've got it in here, and have it all tore apart. I want to change that battery box out. So there's that ETX 30L battery that I and other people have been talking about on the forum. I just had to use the LE bracket, battery bracket. I think the bracket cost me all $3 or $4 or something like that. And the battery fits right in there just like it's supposed to be there. Alright, I did actually take this thing to the car wash this morning, but you can still see there's a lot of stuff up in there. But I started over here. The yellow is the ground from the battery. The blue is the power from the battery. Alright, so I've got the ground side of the trigger part of the relay tied to the ground. And the opposite, the other small wire, this yellow small wire, this one's going to have to tie into the accessory wire. All right, so that will actually click the relay when the key is turned on. And then the positive side of power, which is this big red wire, this I want to tie it through a fuse and then tie it to power from the battery, the blue wire. So as I mentioned earlier, instead of running down and buying another one, I'm not going to need to use the fuse on this thing because the way I'm going to wire it. So I'm going to pull this fuse block off here, cut it off, and then I'm going to use that to actually bring power into the relay. And this is the same type of relay here. I think all I need is 4-pin, but the one I've got up there is 5-pin. Let me pull it out here. So these two are the trigger for the relay, all right, and then these two are what's actually going to allow power through. So the relay will click off and on with just these two hooked up with nothing going through, and then you bring power into one of these and then power out to the fuse block on the other one. So that's the whole concept here. And because the light bar I've got doesn't use more than 20 amps, and that switch that I had bought is a 20 amp switch, I really don't even need the relay as part of this wire harness, but I'll see what I do when I get to that point of this. So what I did was I got all my soldering stuff out. I haven't hooked anything up yet, but I'm going to cut this fuse block off of here and tie it into, cut this wire off, and I'm going to solder it into this wire and put some heat shrink on it, and then hook this up to the terminal that's got the blue wire going to it there. It's covered with a boot right now, but so that's the next step I'm going to do. Oops, yeah. Alright, so what I did was I cut the fuse off the wire bundle that I'm going to use for the lights, and then I cut the excess wire off of that 40 amp fuse that I've got, and I twisted the let's see if I'll take a better picture. I guess it's not focusing. Then I twisted the two of them together so they're intermingled. I also took some of the heat shrink. I took two sizes, one that barely fits on the wire and the next size up, and cut those pieces in half, and I slid one of the smaller ones and the bigger one onto the wire, so those are slid up towards the relay up there. So now I'm going to set up my soldering iron, and I'm going to solder those two wires together, and then put the small heat shrink on it and shrink it down, and then put the bigger heat shrink on and shrink it down. And the solder I'm using is actually a silver solder, so kind of staying away from the lead. And I do have some rosin. It's not a rosin core solder, so I do have some rosin here. So if you're not familiar with soldering, you need rosin to get the solder to stick to metal. Solder itself doesn't stick to metal very good unless you have some rosin on there to help clean it. So I get the soldering station set up and solder that together, and then start heat shrinking. And then that eye on there is too big, so I'm probably going to cut that off and put a smaller eye on there and do the same kind of concept where I'll put a piece of heat shrink over it. I'll solder it on. I do have the crimp tools to crimp it on, but I've never been really happy with the job that does. So I'll solder, maybe crimp and solder a smaller eye onto there to mount onto the positive battery wire. So that's where I'm at right now. Okay, I have it soldered together now, two ends of the wire, and these are those heat shrink tubes, so I'm going to slide a small heat shrink tube over it, and then shrink it down, and then slide this larger one over the smaller one and shrink it down again just to make sure that I get enough coverage for it. So let me get that going. I can't do it with one hand, so I got the smaller one in place, so you just heat it up a little bit on both sides. And it shrinks down, and I'll slide the larger one over that, and then heat shrink that down. So hopefully that'll be enough insulation for that wire. So that didn't take long at all. So there's both heat shrinks over top of the solder, and like I said, I'm going to put a smaller eyelet on here and mount this relay up there above the support bracket, I think. Alright, so I cut the old eyelet off. I was a little worried about these eyelets being enough to carry the amperage, but the eyelet I cut off was a lot smaller than this, a lot narrower. So I took the sleeve off of the plastic sleeve that was off of it. I crimped it on there and I soldered it on there. And just like the last one, I've got small heat shrink and big heat shrink. And I'm going to push those down over it and shrink both of those down. And then that'll be the input power for the relay that will go over to the fuse panel. There it is, all pertified, the heat shrink on it. So now I'm going to put this on the with the blue wire there. Comes from the positive side of the battery. You can see how this is all copper. This is the eyelet I cut off, and you can see how thin that is. So, kind of glad I changed it now. So now I've got the power wire on the positive side, and if I did everything correct, remember that thing is always hot. The blue, you should hear it click when I hit the power on this thing. So that's that relay clicking as it gets power. I haven't skinned the wire or anything, so. Alright, so that's what's going to bring power. So it's going to bring power to the fuse panel. So this wire is going to get shortened up and hooked into the accessories. I found a bullet connector, which is what's up there. And I'll leave enough slack to see if I can tie it off. You can see all the tie straps I've got down here from my last project. So I can tie off all the extra wire later on. So I did with that temporarily, turn the light on here, put a bullet connector on the trigger wire, hook it into the accessories connector to trigger the relay to energize to send power to the fuse panel. Remember the red wire goes to the positive over there, and then this yellow wire is the output of that positive. So now when the key is turned on, it'll energize the relay, and the relay will send power over to here. So now this is going to connect. I'm going to mount this thing in there upside down. It's going to connect to the input stud on this fuse panel, and then I'll have to figure out a ground stud or something over here to run a ground over to the yellow wire over there, the ground wire over here, so I can add all my grounds together on one stud over here. So that's where I'm at now. All I got to do is take that nut off and put that eye connector on there, and then this fuse panel will have 12 volts whenever the key is turned on. While I'm at it, before I hook that up, that blue wire there comes off of the center pin, if there is a center pin on your relay. And depending upon what's a 4-pin or a 5-pin relay, 4-pin won't have the center pin, 5-pin will. So that blue wire will have positive whenever the key is off. So that blue wire needs to be cut off and terminated so that it can't short out on anything. or buy a 4-pin relay and you won't have to worry about it. All right, so this, I think I'm going to mount it up here, and I might use some double-sided mounting tape for right now, and just until I know that's for sure where I want it. I've already looked, and there's nothing on the back side back here of that area. It's right up here, so I can screw through it and put screws and nuts on there, and that's my intent. But short term, until I know that's where I want it, I think I'm just going to use some double-sided sticky tape, and I can just pop the cover off and drill holes through and put screws in there. That's where I want to keep it, and if not, I can pull the double-sided sticky tape off and move it. But there it is. There's my fuse panel. So now I gotta run some wires. I guess they're gonna go up through there, and up the pillar, and then I'll tie them all off up there for now until I get the light bar. And my switch, I'm hoping it's standard size and will fit where this knockout is right here. That's my intent, is to put it right there next to my 4-wheel drive switch for the lights. Well, I kind of got sidetracked. I spent some time changing out that battery box, and the battery box runs all the way back to the back underneath the seat, and kind of screwed my back up from that, so didn't get too much further. But what I did was, this is the relay from the wire harness, so I cut the input wire on that earlier when I stole the fuse from it, and so I put an eyelet on it and attached that to the fuse box. I just kind of plugged in some random fuses. There's nothing really going on there. And then the two output wires, the ground and the power, they come out of the relay. They're supposed to go up to the light. They're in this sheath. So I wanted to run this sheath up, this pillar, up to the top, but I wanted to add some wires into it for a dome light that I like to put up there later on. So what I did was I soldered some wire to the end of this thing. First I figured out how long I wanted it, and I cut a piece of it off. There's the rest of it over there. And then I soldered some wires to the end of the two wires that are in here, and then I pulled the sheath off of these onto that wire, and then I soldered in the smaller red and black for the dome light that I want, and slid the sheath back down over it, and then I routed it up through a hole that was already here in the dash, and I'll push it around the side, and I don't know if I can feed it inside those clamps or strap it off, whichever. I'll figure that out later on. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. That's kind of where I'm at now. So I still need to add the switch in to the dash. I need to wire that in still. So that's kind of my project now. And also, when I installed the winch, I just kind of tied off all the spare cable that was part of that. But I might go ahead and shorten all that up and clean up the wiring I got up under the dash as a prelude to all this other wiring that I'm going to put in there. So let me figure out what I'm going to do next, and then I'll do some video of it. Well, I did get that double-sided sticky tape, the extra double-sided sticky tape, and stuck that there, and I think it's probably where it's going to stay. And like I said, if it does, then I'll just drill some holes through the mounting holes up there. There's one there and there. I'll just drill some holes through there and nut it off on the back. Put some screws there, nut it off, and it'll be set. Okay, I spent some time trying to clean some stuff up. I still got some more wiring to clean up. I shortened up some of the wires that are from the winch, and I still got some more to shorten. As part of that, I ran ground over to a stud over here. So I bolted the fuse panel with a screw there, with the head of the screw on the other side of the firewall, so there's a nut on this side. And I bought a ground from the contactor. It comes from the battery over to here to the stud. So now the stud is the ground, and now I can tie into that stud for other grounds. If I run out of room, I can put another stud in that hole over there and do the same thing. So it was a 7.5 amp fuse in the wire harness for the winch. I just went ahead and pulled it out of the harness, cut the fuse holder off and pulled the fuse out of it. So there's 7.5 for the winch. It'll only be hot now with, of course it was that way earlier, power on. The one below that, I'm going to use that to power dome light. I'm going to try to find an LED dome light and put that in there. So I've wired that, and that wire is the one that I ran earlier that goes up the harness, the same harness with the light I'm going to put on top of the razor. So that's wired in. I got a 5 amp fuse in there now. I'll figure out how that goes later on. So I got 3 connections in there so far. Long term, I'd like to add a light on the back of the razor also for backing up. I put another switch up here I can click on and off. I got something I can use for a backup light. So the switch wires that come out of the relay, all right, I figured out, well, I forgot already, but I figured out which is which, and I know white is always hot. All right, so I ran those over to where the back of the switch is going to be, and then I cut them off to length, so I cut the connector off of them. And now I'm going to wire those into that switch that I'm going to use for my LED light on top. And I am going to leave the relay in there. I guess someday down the road if the relay gives me a problem. I don't think they're sealed from the environment. I don't think that they're hermetically sealed. But we'll see if it lasts. If it lasts, I'll leave it alone. If not, then I might bypass it and just use the switch. So now I'm going to wire the switch, put some connectors on the end of the wires, and wire the switch in. From playing around with the switch inside the house, this should be the wire for the switch. These X's, so I can get the focus here. Put my hand in the way or something. These X's are LED lights. Alright, so one of them, this one, is the one that should always be on with the dash. So 7 and 8 have to get a ground. Alright, so that ground can be tied together, and I'll do that on the switch. And 6 will be the hot when the accessories is on, so that the bottom of the switch is lit up. Alright, and then 3, which will get power from 2. 2 is the main power that's going to switch the relay, so it comes into here and comes out 3 and then goes back to the relay to actually energize the relay. But when 3 gets power, it brings power over to this LED and lights this LED. So that'll be the top of the switch. Alright, it's not really drawn right, because if it was the way that it was, it looks like that if the switch was energized, it'd be on 3, and de-energized, it'd be on 6, and you wouldn't have to wire the dash lights in, because it would already get power from 2, but it's not actually that way. 2, from what I can figure out, but 2 and 3 are not connected when the switch is turned off. Alright, so I need to bring a ground in to 7 and 8. Accessory power into 6, bottom of the switch is on, and then primary power to energize the relay into 2, and then 3 goes over to the relay to actually energize it to turn the lights on. So let me start that, and then I'll get back with you. Okay, as I mentioned, I cut the switch that came with the wire harness off. It's got a connector there. And there's white, black, and blue wires that go to the switch. And then I look in here, and you can see the white is tied in with the red. So it's an always hot. All right, and you can see I tied it to another one there. So it'll be hot whenever the accessory is on. Accessory power is on. All right, we want 6 to be on whenever the accessory is on. All right, and then the other one is 2. So the white wire goes to 2, and then I've got to put it over to 6. All right, and again, 3 is going to be what triggers the relay to energize, and 7 and 8 are ground. So I tied the grounds together with a jumper wire. All right, I could have done the same thing that I did with that, and probably should have, instead of putting the heat on there. I can do with the power, so we'll see if I screw anything up or not. All right, but you can see that the black, which is normally a ground, is right there. All right, and it's tied in with the ground. All right, and then blue is over here, which is a trigger wire. All right, so the trigger wire for the relay is going to be on 3. All right, so I put all that together. So the blue wire is on 3. The white wire, which is always hot, is on 2 and 6. And then the ground wire is on 7 and 8. And these numbers, I don't know if you can see them here, but the numbers are actually up on the back of it here. All right, so now I put all those connectors on there and soldered them on and heat shrink some of them. So now I'm going to click this into the dashboard and try it out, see if I can feel that relay clicking or not. Can't hear it click. Let me see if I can feel it click. Yep. All right, and the lights, the bore light part of it comes on. Comes on with the accessory on. And the picture of the pig comes on when I turn it on. All right, so all I have to do is strap up a bunch of wires, and then day after tomorrow, the actual light assembly is going to come in, and need to hook that up and find that dome light. I ordered a switch for the dome light, so I'll put the switch for the dome light over here somewhere. So ordered a switch for the dome light and wire that in, and I'll be set to go. All right, so I'm back at it again. I don't remember where I left off earlier. It's been a couple days. But I ran that wire bundle up the inside of my pillar here. And I just kind of left the wires up here so I can go hunting the other day. So switch is all mounted. I know I did all that earlier. And now I was mounting the light bar itself. Right now it's kind of mounted pointing down a little bit. I think I'm going to try that and see if I like it before I do anything else. But I was having a hard time figuring out how to mount it. And I found these clamps. I think I got them on eBay for 10 bucks. And I had to go buy some longer bolts. But it seems to be, I mean, I can move the whole razor. The tool's falling off. Move the whole razor, so it seems to be mounted pretty well. So now I'm down to the point of wiring in. The light bar came with both ends of the plug, so not a big deal. I'm going to wire that into the wire bundle. I ran up the pillar, cut off the extra, and should be ready to go then. Well, I got the dome light switch wired in. Turn the light off on here, and much earlier finished wiring this in. It's a little hard to tell being light out right now. There's my helper there. That's the headlights on. And that's the light bar. There's the headlights off and on with the light bar on. And the dome lights, I wound up wiring in some LED strip light. Not real pretty up top, but throws a lot of light out. So I wired that switch into the same as the other. I borrowed the ground off of the light bar switch, and then left a ground hanging off of it in case I ever wire another switch in. Ground can't short it out or anything, but is everything working? Been fooling around long enough. I got my tender trying to charge the battery back up. That's it. Anything done? Everything's done. Let me know if you have any questions.